This Xbox tirade that's going on around the internet doesn't stop to implode upon itself when you examine very carefully. We all know that these companies don't care about us. However, whenever there's a customer benefit somewhere and you find industry veterans who do not like the customer benefit, you have to ask them why, right? Because you see, if say this person, Rafael Colantonio's game, had sold like Expedition 33 or Power World, he wouldn't be talking about this whole Game Pass stuff, right? Now, you know what's crazy is in two other videos, I've shown you guys something that I thought you should, pay attention to. One of them was the fact that the Larian developer, who's I think a publishing guy, talking about this whole Game Pass model was the funniest one because when you think about Larian developed Baldur's Gate 3 on the back of developers. I said on the back of developers, on the back of the goodwill of gamers who were willing to support them through early access. So basically, they took a bag from gamers themselves and then, were able to go ahead and start to push forward in their development. Another person that went ahead to, reply or at least comment on this was, in my opinion, one of the funniest. And this person's name is Joe Kreiner. That's what they put on Twitter here. And they are a former VP of business development with Epic Games. Now, the crazy thing, though, is I mentioned in my other video that the irony of this particular person posting saying exactly is funny because Epic Games is literally the developer behind the most popular game so far in the world that has been the bane of existence of basically any video game in the entire video game history since Fortnite blew up. And what's even weird, and I didn't say this in that last video, is that Epic Games engages in giving out free games frequently. So Epic Games by themselves has a very popular game, and number two, has a free games delivery program where they give developers a bag of some sort, because these games are not all Unreal Engine games. These games are, from different walks of the whole spectrum, right? They give a bag to developers, and these developers are able to pretty much go ahead and put their games on there for you to download for free. For no subscription cost at all, by the way. I don't know if you guys know. You do not have to pay anything to get these Epic Games titles for free. It literally just is granted to you by some reason. I don't know what it is. Now, what's weird and what's wild is, as this developer is talking about this, there are also gamers who constantly, parrot their talking points. And when you ask them, okay, what exactly is the qualms with Game Pass? Many of them can't necessarily give you a reason because, again, they're just parroting these narratives I don't know what it is. So I got in a conversation with someone about this matter, right? They posited this stuff on here and said, I don't like Game Pass. Okay, I have my reasons as to why. Perfectly fine. I don't believe it's sustainable, and I don't believe it's good for the industry as a whole. Now, here's the challenge. When you say you don't believe it's sustainable, well, that's weird because sustainability of a business proposition and the way the business is run would require you to put some financial data out here. And then to say I don't believe it's good for the industry as a whole, you'd have to tell us exactly why it's bad for the industry. And they said for a lot of devs, it's bad and impacts pure game sales. Okay, show us the data and show us the way these games landed and what their sales and interests look like. And they said, but for me, I also don't see the value for myself. That's just my 2 cents. So I replied and said, so it's a belief and nothing based on facts or stats? And that's when they replied, no, I literally said I don't like Game Pass personally. That's my opinion. I'm not saying my opinion is facts. As for devs speaking out against it, well, it doesn't take much. Search, the info is out there. This is where I think they kind of caught themselves in a trap, right? So here's exactly how the conversation has been going down since then. In fact, the person is probably replying me now in this in this situation. They said, let me go ahead and let me give you guys some context, okay? So bear with me because this is very important, right? And so they said, I've tried Game Pass. I didn't care for it. I gave it 12 months of trying and paying for it. Just found out it was a waste of my money to pay for a gaming subscription service. Man, it took you 12 months to realize that the value wasn't there for you, all right, it's your money, do what you want. I said, that's perfectly fine. But I'm hoping that's not the reason you think it's bad for the industry. They said, no, I think it's bad for the industry due to what a lot of devs have come out and said when speaking against it. Now, this notion that a lot of devs are coming out to speak against Game Pass is one that's fomented here on the internet by people who are just, for some reason, again, like I said, parroting what the media is saying. The media is supposed to be, in my opinion, or at least have the concern for the, customer. But more of their concerns are for, in many cases, the industry in some arbitrary way. And so you know what I said? I said, okay, what have the devs said about it? I haven't heard a single point that they've made against Game Pass. Do you know that these developers who continue to talk about Game Pass and say, oh, Game Pass is bad for the industry and all that stuff, when you ask them why is it bad, the very first thing they tell you is that it cannibalizes sales. But none of them ever want to go ahead and tell you that they actually took money based on an agreement on exactly what they thought their sales floor was going to be and appropriated it from there and then agreed and signed the document. It usually is based on that kind of a negotiation. So I think that from seeing how Phil Spencer talks about the Game Pass deals, a lot of these developers that are complaining, or even the 3 or 4 that are complaining, just signed a bad deal or didn't have any faith in their game enough to say, we don't think Microsoft, you think our game is going to do well, let's walk away. That's what I think. And I don't think I'm far from the truth. So I said, inform me. So they put all these links over here and said, that's just some instances I linked above. There are plenty of developers. I said, trust me, I've searched and searched. That's why I'm asking you. I see the opposite. And also the quality of the game speaks for themselves. What exactly did they say makes Game Pass bad for the industry? I'm looking for valid reasons to inform myself. Instead, when I look at developers who their games have done well independently of Game Pass, they all speak as to the value of Game Pass. This is Power World's developer. This is Expedition 33, who its developers as well enjoyed Game Pass and were even thanking the people who bought their game outside of the Game Pass users, right? Then you have the developers over at Citizen Sleeper who said Game Pass basically was keeping a lot of indie studios alive. This is April of last year. Then you also have the developers of Lies of P explaining the benefit of launching day one with Game Pass. So I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, so what's going on here? Could it be that people didn't like their game? And by the way, Rafael Colantonio made a game. And if you see the game, many of you will be like, oh yeah, I probably saw that game. Did you play it? Right? Could it be that the devs, that the game did not stand out? Could it be that gamers are just more occupied with live service single player titles? Which is funny that bro over there, Joe Kreiner, whose, former company that he worked for, pumped out this game, right? That's basically bodying everybody in terms of, rankings. And then they said Microsoft themselves admits to Game Pass cannibalizing sales. And that's why I basically fed them some data and said, hey, Xbox gives the developers money to secure themselves from any sales they may lose, while they have the option to go out and have the opportunity to sell anywhere. Game Pass third-party titles are not locked exclusively like PlayStation or Epic Games does. And I gave him the whole thing. And he said, I think Game Pass works for certain devs. Okay, now, do you notice that in light of the reality, you notice that the position has shifted, right? Do you notice that? Because now it was bad for the industry, but now certain devs who were part of the industry and are benefiting from it, it's not bad for them. I'm continuing to work, the logic into this situation. And it's good. I'm glad that they're actually shifting their position little by little. But here's what they said. They said, but there are medium-sized dev teams and bigger devs who speak out against it. Also, Microsoft will have a cap on how much they can offer a bag, of money. But here's the thing. There's no cap on how much copies of the games they can sell. Do you understand what I mean? Like, a lot of people say this stuff. Like, watch, Microsoft should go ahead and continue giving you money infinitely. That makes no sense. So I'm just curious, though. I mean, I could ask them that question. I said, I'm curious what the devs have said and if their games did well independently or not. Game Pass is available to the smallest console base So how does it affect those on PlayStation and Nintendo? Even Stalker 2 sold well. And then they said, I did link to you what Arcane, Larian, and other developers said. Do you know something that this user said in, as we were talking about all this stuff, right? They showed me Take-Two Interactive talking, smack about Game Pass. He said Take-Two has spoken about it before. You know what's weird is I laughed and said Take-Two is looking out for its fiduciary interest, and so-called Take-Two puts games on Game Pass after all that noise was made. So when Take-Two was talking about it, look at the date that he cites in 2021. The same Take-Two came around to take a bag to put 2K24, and this is the second time that GTA 5 is going on Game Pass. In fact, the first time, and then now the enhanced edition. So after all that nonsense talk, these so-called developers that are talking about this blah, 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 are basically in a position where, their game is needing more marketing, or at least needing to position itself to appeal to a very, very saturated market and an audience that's very much bogged down by a lot of games. All this talk about the Arcane and the Larian developer and all that stuff, that's a whole bunch of hogwash. It really is. Because if those guys see a Game Pass deal that would suit and benefit them, they'll take it. How do I know? Larian's developer, when they were making Baldur's Gate 3, they took early access money from gamers. This cannot be left unsaid. Their game was appreciated by gamers. Yes, people bought the game. No problem. I'm not mad. I'm happy for them. But I'm just surprised that they somehow want to pull the ladder up and all that. It just makes no sense. So this person is asking me like, I've linked to you the Larian developer. I've linked to you the Arcane developer, the other smaller dev, and what they said themselves. They mentioned their reasons why they don't like Game Pass. And I said, those guys haven't made a single point. I've been looking at those tweets, and here's the link. Can you tell me what point, reason, situation, or data point that they make to claim that Game Pass is bad for the industry? Because when I click it, all I see is him basically saying, oh, they tell you that the sales are going to be this, but then blah, 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 blah. Here's what he says, right? I think it's going to kill everyone else because it's because of infinite money coexist with other models. They'll kill everything else or give up. How is that even possible if they'll give up? If you think it's not sustainable for them, how does that affect the industry? It's just a bunch of contradictory, frameworks that's being put here. Their big question is what happens when the money runs out? Infinite money. But at some point, reality has to hit. But you took the Game Pass money 3 years ago for your game, Weird West. Were you not happy with the deal you signed? If you weren't happy, why did you sign it? What went on? What happened with your game at the time that it launched in 2022? And this is a question that we have to go ahead and ask and say, what? I mean, think about it. He made money off of Game Pass. He literally did. Because even if his game, let me go ahead and get a calculator, because a lot of these people, they're not, I don't know what it is. I can't seem to fathom. If he took even 20% of development costs, right? Even if, let's say he developed Weird West, right? With $5 million. Let's say he took out an investor, gave him $5 million, and he made Weird West. And he went to Xbox and said, hey, or Xbox approached him and said, hey, man, if you want to launch your game on Game Pass, we'll give you 20% of your development cost. He could have said, no, I want 30%. I want 50%. He could have mentioned whatever he wanted. Or he could have negotiated whatever he wanted. And even if they give him only 20% of development costs to launch on Game Pass day and date for 1 year, and he agreed to it, he still made money. Meaning he did not have to go out and still account for those sales to make up the 20% of that $5 million, of which 20% of $5 million would be what? Huh? Tell me. $1 million. So of the $5 million he may have spent, and now this is a hypothetical situation, he is no longer worried about how he's going to make that extra million. He now only has to make $4 million and then give that $4 million back to whoever the investor is, which would be production cost, right? Right? And then everything else that he sells Weird West for is all icing on the cake, free and clear for him to basically go and celebrate. What are these developers talking about? I mean, like, I'm so shocked as to what it is that what is he saying that the problem is with Game Pass? Like, what exactly is he saying? Can he just tell us, okay, well, the deals that they sign are bad? Can he say that? He can't. The reason he can't is because other developers are benefiting from it because their games received the spotlight and their games were appreciated by the community of gamers that played them. This thing isn't rocket science. This is how every game is. Every game faces its own challenges. Some games make it through. Some games don't. Right? So I'm asking this user, I'm like, just give me the goods. Look at this. They said this. They said, they've gone ahead, and Rafael Colantonio, founder of Arcane Studios, calling Game Pass an unsustainable model that damages the industry. He argued that service reliance on Microsoft Infinite Money makes the economic realities of... They basically just said, okay, so nothing. So nothing? Because there really isn't anything here to say. These people are just basically making a mountain out of a molehill. It's an unsustainable model. Based on what? It's going to harm potentially harming the industry. Based on what data set? Right? He believes that it either dominates the market or is abandoned. So nothing. How is it going to dominate the market when it's actually its biggest user base is on the smallest console population that's available? So he's making stuff up. He's making stuff up. So here's what I think. I think a lot of these people that are over here basically just, look at it, he's just repeating. When I asked him, I said, so what did they say that makes Game Pass bad for the industry? He said, he's pointing that it relies on Microsoft's infinite money. Microsoft doesn't have infinite money. That's just a metaphor. The AI is given an overview, right? And it masks the economic realities for developers and publishers. What realities does it mask when Phil Spencer has come out here and be transparent as to exactly how they do their deals? These people don't want to read or do the work in understanding the situation around the gaming industry. They just want to talk. This person claiming that they unsubscribe from, Game Pass after 12 months and stuff, that they prefer to buy their games, that's how they kind of started the conversation. I just prefer to buy my games and blah, blah, blah. Spend more money if that's what you want to do. But to sit here and try to justify with basically empty claims from developers who are basically disgruntled as to the fact that the industry has bodied them. Instead of them to adapt, instead of him to be talking about his game, he's complaining about Game Pass. Bro, you should be selling more copies of Weird West. Instead, you've now created an entire viral tweet. Maybe the goal was to actually bring attention to himself so people can see his game. Perhaps this is a reverse psychological marketing scheme. Who knows? Thanks for watching the video. Peace out.